Hello and welcome to the Royal Road School of Carmelite Prayer. We are studying the foundations of Teresa of Avila in 16th century Spain. Please note that the notes to this video can be found below. So today what we're looking at is the Teresian communities that were founded by Teresa of Avila, or Teresa of Jesus herself. And she begins by saying, "Whoever has not begun the practice of prayer, I beg you, for the love of the Lord, not to go without so great a good." Teresa's convictions of prayer's transforming powers really drew others to her. As a matter of fact, her rooms at the Incarnation monastery were often used for spiritual conversation. As a matter of fact, in one of these meetings, and half in jest, Maria Ocampo spoke of a possible reform. She suggested a return to a more eremitical life, the kind the Holy Fathers had embraced on Mount Carmel. These discalced religious, of which Teresa was a part, comprised groups to live in austerity and recollection. They made themselves externally recognizable through their coarse wool habits and their bare feet. A consistent income to live without anxieties was Teresa's first concern, but with further information she changed her mind, resolving to found her houses in poverty, without a fixed income, trusting in God's providence. When Teresa changed to the new discalced mode of life in 1562, she changed her name to Teresa of Jesus, and it was only in this century, the 20th century, that those outside of Spain began calling her Teresa of Avila. Prior General Rubio, when visiting the contemplative Carmelites, encouraged Teresa to make as many foundations as she had hairs on her head, and provided her with all the necessary permissions. In a letter to her brother Lorenzo in December of 1561, Teresa summed up her idea as she initially envisioned it: to found a monastery where there will be only 15 nuns and no possibility for an increase in numbers. They will practice a very strict enclosure and thus never go out or be seen without veils covering their faces. Their lives will be founded on prayer and mortification. The nuns would be hidden from the gaze of the world and be able to serve God with greater surrender and freedom. Many nuns, though, complained about the norms being too rigorous. Yet the practice of enclosure at the Incarnation was not a rigorous one, and Teresa often went outside the monastery. It was not until exempt from the observance of the Incarnation in 1564 was Teresa free to practice enclosure in its rigorous form. Her own enthusiasm for cloister rested on her determination to provide a contemplative environment for her nuns. She writes of the happiness of the nuns when able to finally set up an enclosure. She states, "No one but those who experience it will believe the joy that is felt once we are enclosed where no secular persons can enter. There is a great consolation in finding ourselves alone." Teresa points out that the cloister is for her nuns, what water is for fish. living in the clear, flowing stream of their spouse. But in her way of perfection, Teresa warns her nuns against extravagance in their buildings. More often than not, though, Teresa's nuns had to make do with what they could find or afford. Her nuns today still continue in some of the same houses, living the contemplative life Teresa established in them. What mattered to Teresa was not so much an elaborate building as a beautiful view and a garden full of trees and flowers that served as a place for hermitages. Teresa discovered that fewer nuns meant greater harmony and quiet. Her ideal remained a small group of good friends gathered in the Lord to live totally for Him through a contemplative life of prayer, useful for His church. At the beginning, the number of nuns Teresa had in mind was 13, a symbol of Christ and His 12 apostles. In her last years, Madre Teresa increased the limit to 20 in houses with fixed incomes. In those founded in poverty, she set the limit to 13 or 14. But as the nuns grew older, requiring care from others, adaptations had to be made in the numbers. So in conclusion then, inspired by the gospel spirit, Teresa of Jesus created an eremitical way of life and illuminated this contemplative mode of life with fresh insight and placed emphasis mainly on the apostolic dimension of prayer, on its relation to all those concerns for the service of Christ that lay so close to her heart. Teresa introduced something new within the church, the life of prayer as a service. Amen. To be continued. The next subject that we will look at will be the austerity in the reform movements. I hope you're enjoying this journey through the foundations. I realize that the introduction is long, but Father Kieran Kavanaugh felt it was very important to lay a good foundation, a solid foundation, before beginning our travels through Spain. Amen.